in contexts such as Liberia during the Civil War, or Sierra Leone, Cambodia, Guinea, Congo. And I think that's when I really understood, and also directly working with people that had suffered to such an extent, that peace is not just about agreements.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest who will introduce himself. Ignacio, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Maurice. So my name is Ignacio Packer, and I live in Europe. I live in Switzerland, actually. And if I have to talk about my journey from when I was born, well, it's almost 65 years ago, eh? So you may hear a young voice, but I'm not that young. And well, I often say that my journey has been less about moving from one job to another, or with an idea of a career, but much more about a thread, and one that connects people and places and moments. And in the midst of all that, for me, it's the element of trust, and generally trust that I have received, trust that I have given. Sometimes that has been broken, but I have had I've been very privileged. I was born in Germany, and my father was so this is 1962, and my father was posted in Berlin. So that's the time of the wall, the Cold War. So I was very much in as a child with the understanding of how we are interconnected, but also how the world is unequal. And certainly that from a childhood stayed very strongly with me. My father went on then and worked also for NATO. So that's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that has contributed since its creation after the Second World War to maintain peace, even though there has been used as a military force on, I think, a couple of occasions. But I was very much brought up with that strong sense that the world is interconnected and that there's something different out there. So I did move as a child into different countries. My father actually working in Germany. Actually, he was British, so he was born in Wales, and my mother was Spanish, and they also brought me the notion of how very different people could meet and love each other. Yeah? They came from very different social backgrounds, but they met, and they had 4 children, and had a happy. At least I had a very happy life as a child with the love of my parents. I feel I'm very privileged for that, and very rapidly I said, well, how can I contribute to this world where I had understood the diversity and wanting to find out a bit more. So I did study, and I studied finance, and then I went into banking and financial companies and auditing. And then basically really from one day to another, I said, no, that's not what I want to do. though I didn't feel unhappy at all, and I switched to work for a humanitarian organization that probably many of you have heard of, Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. And they're moving from having a suit and a tie into finding myself in West Africa, working on health systems.
How old were you at that time when you made that switch?
It was probably 27, 20,
Okay.
28. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do you
also,
remember why you made that switch? What was it? Did something happen? Did you hear a story? You know, did you see a
yeah,
documentary? Yeah.
yeah. You're very good with your questions, Maurice. There is something very, very special that happened with me, and
Uh-huh.
probably happens to many people, is that I never thought I had really made the choice of my studies. My father, which I had a lot of admiration for, found that I could calculate rapidly and so on. That well, he thought I was bright. I
Uh-huh.
wasn't sure about that,
Uh,
and he said, "Oh, you're going to go into business." So when it was time to go to university, basically, I don't think even I asked my father. I had so much admiration for him. He decided for me, so I went to business school, and then that's how I started working in banking and finance. Uh, I found it interesting, but it wasn't a passion. Eh? And my father died, and then a few years later, I was having dinner with my mother, and my mother said, "Are you happy in your job, in your life?" And I said, "Well, basically what I said, yeah." Now, I said, "Yes, but my job is not a passion." And then she said to me, "But stop it, Ignacio. You don't have to remain loyal to your father.
mm,
Free yourself." So that's how I freed myself. And it was with the permission of my mother, my father having passed away. And just a few months later, I mean, I had applied for Médecins Sans Frontières and found myself in a plane to go into the bush in Guinea, where I spent a few years. And that's where it all started. And
Wow.
then I've been mainly working in the humanitarian sector since. So about 30 years for different humanitarian organizations.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Ignacio. I'm always wondering then, did the same happen with your siblings? And then, you know, that they also did something that to please, you know, your father? And even maybe the same with your mom. Did
Mm,
she also change after the death of your dad?
mm, mm. Yeah, it did also happen with, at least with one of my brothers.
Mm-hmm.
My father was an extraordinary man, so was my mother. But my
Mm-hmm.
father came from uh, underprivileged a family, so he had to
Mm-hmm.
work from an early age. And I mean, he finished his career as a diplomat, and so
Mm-hmm.
that means a lot of the hard work that had gone on that. And to make a living, he used to play the trumpet also while he was studying, and that's where he met my mother in
Yeah.
one of these posh ballrooms in London, where my mother, coming from Spain, had come as an au pair girl
Mm.
to learn English. My mother coming from an aristocratic family in Madrid, and that's how they connected. He was playing the trumpet, she was on the dance floor,
Mm.
and that's the importance also of music there has been for my father. And one of my brothers took up to play not the trumpet but the cornet, so very very similar. And he wanted to become professional. So at the age of 17, 18, he said, "Well, I want to go to the music conservatory." And my father said, "No, you're
Mm.
not. You, you're going to study." And he said, "Okay." And he just dropped the trumpet and never played ever again until my father's funeral.
Mm. Wow.
Uh, and then ever since then, he's been playing the trumpet as an amateur because he's chosen another profession. So yes, and I say this with a lot of love for my parents,
Mhm.
but how can we educate our children for our children to be freer in the choices that they make?
Hmm.
And of course, this is a different. This was this is 50 years ago, 60 years ago,
Yeah.
and it will be different from one culture to another. But to find a way to live with passion, and here I'm ending my professional life. I will be retiring at end of this year, but I don't like that word retirement.
Uh-huh.
I use the Spanish word
And what is that?
jubilación,
Okay.
jubilación, jubilation.
Uh-huh.
It opens for another
Chapter.
chapter, and I think I will remain for a long time. At least I hope useful for society, and with the energy and the passion that has led me for so many years. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm always interested in people's journeys, but then especially how that does compare with siblings. So you gave us a little bit of a peek there, so I appreciate that. So okay, you went to Doctors Without Borders, and
Mm.
so that was something completely different, right? So take us through that, and how, yeah, how did the learning curve go, or was it easy, you know,
Yeah.
or simple?
I think what drove me there and
Mm-hmm.
continued to drive me through, throughout until now is really the question: how do we rebuild trust in in the world that feels incredibly fragmented?
Mm.
And I think this is absolutely of today's conversation. And I had some recent reflections because I was at the World Economic Forum
Mm.
in January to try to make sense on that question of the fragility of trust, and very much to explore the role um, of each of us, of how individually we have an important role. And this is not just as professionals. This is basically as human beings in our everyday life. And the organization I work for, Initiatives of Change, the Core Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
has had this focus on system changes,
Mm-hmm.
but the change of a system coming from the personal change, the individual change, taking um, uh, personal responsibility for what is happening, and recognizing that we are in an interconnected world. And this organization has been doing this for 80 years. So the Core Foundation Initiatives of Change. It's an organization that I head here in Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
where we we have an office in Geneva, where we work on global issues. We're an actor of International Geneva, and then in just an hour and a half away from Geneva, we have the privilege of owning, well, the privilege and sometimes the curse of owning a 30,000 square meter building,
Mm.
which is a Belle Epoque 1902 former hotel, luxury hotel, which in 1946 was purchased by some individuals and families to create this foundation, with the aim to create a space for people to come to think about how Europe should be rebuilt. And then it continued in expanding its mandate, and there are now 36 legal entities throughout the world, and there's another big center, Panchgani in India, where similar work is done. Um, People in their diversity, sometimes with opposing views, are brought together in this type of setting, which is offered as a safe space for them sometimes even just recognize each other in their humanity. We had recently delegations from 2 African countries who came here for some peace negotiations, and they got to an agreement earlier than expected. Of course, this is the skills of the mediators, the will of the people who come. But I also like to believe that it's also the type of atmosphere and the type of setting that we offer in this place that is in midst of nature and with an incredible view on the Léman, which some call the Geneva Lake, but it's not the Geneva Lake. It doesn't belong to Geneva. And then to the Alps that we can see from here.
I would like to, because I'm really intrigued by what Cox is doing, and you were shedding some light on it. But before we go there, I would like to take you a few steps back, because you said, that how do we rebuild trust is, a key question for you that you're working on. But how did you get there? And how, and specifically, how did your work and your experiences with the Doctors Without Borders as well as ICWA, how did that bring you to, looking at this, concluding that this is a key question that we need to work on?
I would say probably I realized that far from home, while I could have realized it at home. But I worked in contexts such as Liberia during the Civil War, or Sierra Leone, Cambodia, Guinea, Congo. And I think that's when I really understood, and also directly working with people that had suffered to such an extent that peace is not just about agreements. It is about relationships. So how do you renew the relationships? There are different ways of doing it. Of course, around a meal, we know that's an important element. But arts, in their different forms, also a catalyst to recreate the connection between people. And I think whether in the field where I used to be, working in these different contexts, or now with the co-foundation, my focus has been very much to create the spaces where people can reconnect, and sometimes across very deep divides. And me myself, I mean, earlier on I said I've been very privileged that I've met so many incredible people and so on that have given me their trust, that I've given their trust. But sometimes, yes, the trust has been broken, and I have had to go through the difficult journey of trying to reconnect and to rebuild trust. I try, and sometimes it does take a lot of time and worries, but I just do not want to leave this planet without mending what I can mend. Of course, inevitably, there are relationships that work better than others, but all the things perhaps that have been more difficult for me in terms of relationships, I try to address them, and try to address them as rapidly as possible. Some have to stay and wait, because to reconnect with someone, to regain elements of trust, but it's not necessarily trust that you're looking for, to heal wounds from the past. At the beginning, I thought you needed to be 2, to do a reconciliation, but when the other one doesn't want to reconcile, you can also do it by yourself, and with yourself. Um, yeah.
I, I don't know if I did my homework properly, but when I was listening to you and so reading, I was reminded about, I think I read something that you said that you often speak about staying the course and rather than pushing limits. And my question to you is, what drives you in life? What keeps you moving forward, especially when the path becomes long or uncertain?
Yeah. Hmm. I like I like then to talk about one of my one of my passions, another of my passions, which is running. I mean, I think now for 20, well, over 25 years, I
Hmm.
do long distance running. So I this is in the nature. So this is trail running, sometimes several days in a row. So I for many years now, and the sport has changed, but I'll do trail running. So um, often 1, 2, or 3 distances of 100 miles in running, and then I moved on to longer distances. So the 350 kilometers with 30,000 elevation. And now I'm not. Um, uh, I don't see this only as sport, and this probably would resonate with you, Maurice. When we engage on these long distances, whether in any form that they are, that we do with passion, um, of course our body has to follow, but where is our mind and our soul in that? And for me, this feeds me so much uh, in finding myself, perhaps in what some would feel are impossible challenges, where some would describe it as suffering and so on. And I think between trail runners, we find it difficult to explain, but there are different categories of trail runners, that this actually is part of our joy of finding ourselves with ourselves and pushing the limits. And how do you manage running 168 kilometers where you don't think about kilometer 168? You think about what you're doing at the moment, the kilometer that you're running now, and progressively you get to that amount. So when you think about it at the start, say it's impossible, I'll never manage. Then you get used to it, I can tell you. Then you want to push the limits further, further, and further. I don't know if you have experienced that, Maurice, because you do long distance walking, don't you?
Yeah. No, absolutely. The the challenge for me is that I always get injured. I've my feet are quickly I've quickly blisters. So and I've had how do you call it? Um, plantar fasciitis.
Yeah.
So and I have had it now a couple of times, and I continue to walk through it, but you can't walk through it. You have to take rest. So that means then when I'm done, I really am out for 2 3 weeks because I can't walk at all. So I know about the pain and pushing and not wanting to give up and. Um, Unfortunately, my wife, and fortunately and unfortunately, my wife vetoed it now, so I can only do 20 miles now, and not the 100 anymore, which saved me this time. Last Monday I walked. I contributed 20 mile to a 100 mile campaign of my organization, and actually I got injured in the last mile
Oh,
again. So it was good that I did not have to walk another 20 mile the next day. So my wife saved me there. So I have to give her credit. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Um, so it's interesting. How do you use that then? Um, you know, in your leadership philosophy.
Mm. Mm. It's probably not always very easy to work with me because
Yeah.
for me everything is possible.
Uh-huh.
Eh? So it's yeah, and in terms of my leadership style, it's I think is one to try and drive organizations with compassion and with trust, and I use a lot of humor.
Mhm.
You don't have fun, even in serious situations, where then you're losing a lot. And the element of humility is very important.
Mm.
I had the privilege of leading on some large organizations, and the core foundation is a complex organization, um, but we're just a tiny drop.
Mm.
And how does our drop connect with the drops that others are bringing?
Mm.
Um, and I must say I get increasingly concerned on on and probably that's what worries me the most is
Mhm.
the growing inability we have to disagree without dehumanizing.
Mm.
How can we build, maintain at all levels in society a courage to listen and a courage to speak out, but in a respectful way? And that, as we're all following, is going absolutely off course. And that's where we have to bring the cursor back to that element of the notion of having, and it's about courage. It's not about soft skills. It's about courage to listen and the courage to speak out. And if we want to revitalize democracy, those are two elements that we have to bring them back at the level of everyday life, from the education that we're offering our children to the way we interact with our neighbors. When we look at the situations of um, a increasing number of countries with such a divide in society, um, and that's because we're not managing to to have that ability to listen to the other and to express ourselves in a way that can be received. And I must say that that element for me, I've always liked to test the narrative that I have or the opinions I may have, and also to listen to people that I know will have different opinions to me. And sometimes I find it extremely difficult, but I test myself on that. And I do remember one moment where I was so positively surprised. I was invited for a TED talk in Wake Forest, that's in North Carolina, and that was during Trump's campaign. And they asked me to talk about migration. So very proudly, I prepared my stuff from Europe, flew over to Wake Forest. And then when you have a TED talk, you have the evening before where you rehearse. So I rehearsed, and then the organizers came up to me and said, hey, this is good, but I'm not sure the audience would like many of the things that you're saying. Because, of course, my position on migration is
Mm.
around how do you make migration safe, not
Mhm.
how do you stop it.
Mhm.
And I probably tweaked a few things, but I said, no, let's see what happens. And of course, it was a room of 1,000 people, and I didn't have a roar of applause and so on, but I wasn't booed and was able to have conversations afterwards with people that had very different opinions to mine, but it was uh, lively, but a really very interesting conversation. So we have to dare also to speak out, but in the right way to give our opinions, because somewhere along the line, for many things, not all, it's somewhere in between
Mm-hmm.
that we have to find the position. Yeah.
I mean, my listeners know that what you just said really resonates with me. You know, I am started this podcast also, you know, trying to improve and strengthen connection between people. And then one of the, uh, you know, slogans or sentences, sayings that I'm using is I've stolen from a philosopher called Ken Wilber, who said, you know, everybody's perspective is true, albeit partial, or nobody can be wrong 100% of the time. So I really hope that this podcast is contributing to connection. And the way I'm trying to do this, among others, is through, you know, questions, weaving into questions from previous guests for my next guest, so that I'm really connecting you outside of connecting with me and with the listeners. So the previous guest has a question for you, and the question is,
Where have you had your mind changed on an issue and why?
Mm. Mm. Um, I think my switch. I've had a number of moments,
Mm-hmm.
throughout my life, and luckily my mind has changed. But one of the key ones happened a few years ago when I switched, and it wasn't brutal; it was progressive. But when I switched from the humanitarian sector to where I'm working now, so I've worked on a number of systems, um, and I believe that change um, would come primarily from through systems, and I work on policies, on institutions, on agreements, and of course this matters. But then focusing, and in the humanitarian sector, you are very much on the what you're doing. You have to act quickly. You have the pretension of saying that you're saving lives and preventing suffering. And when people are in crisis, that's true. What matters is immediate and tangible action. But then there are limits on this approach, and um, if nothing changes on how people relate to one another, the same patterns would reappear. Okay? And that's where the thinking, at least my thinking, shifted. And moving to the co-foundation brought me into a space where the focus is not only on what we do, but how we do it. And on the idea that lasting change comes from people themselves. Just relying on a change of system because of policies, because of an organization, is completely insufficient. And today I see much more clearly that sustainable change requires both action in the moment, absolutely, but also deeper work on trust, on relationships, on on individual responsibility in this interconnected world. And without that, well, systems are not going to hold. Yeah.
can I piggyback further on the system changes and then the need for that you need to work on it yourself? It may be, you know, the biggest goals that we set through a system is the Sustainable Development Goals. They're
Mm.
not perfect, but at least there was some kind of discussion, among many countries in the world, many different stakeholders. They came up with 17 Sustainable Development Goals, like end poverty, end hunger. We are supposed to reach those goals before 2030, but we are on average not, we are not at more than 15 to 70%. Now, a growing group of people is maybe saying something similar to what you just said. They say, the reason that we are not reaching those goals is because we did not pay attention, or we are not paying attention to the ability, skills, and knowledge that you need as an individual as well as a community. So they came up with 5 inner development goals: being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. And under that are 25 skills like empathy, forgiveness, resilience, critical thinking. So my question to you is, have you heard about the SDGs, IDGs? And if so, or if not, what are your thoughts about this?
The funny thing is that on my first day of work at the Co-Foundation, it was on the 1st of May, a few days prior to me starting to work, a friend of mine calls me and says, Jan Eriksson from the Inner Development Goals is in town. Do you want to come and have dinner with us? So that's on the 1st of May. We work in Switzerland on the 1st of May.
Yeah, yeah, in the US as well. So
yeah, and I had dinner with Jan, and then there was Willy, and others, and I had heard about the Inner Development Goals as being very much this blind spot that we had when we set up the Sustainable Development Goals, and certainly at that time, over 10 years ago now, 11 years ago and more, I was part of this and working on this as tens and or hundreds and thousands of people. Not that I was unique, but we were many working on this. And then he tells me about the Inner Development Goals and so on. And he also tells me that actually some of the inspiration came while the Sustainable Development Goals were being prepared in Co, so where I was working.
Okay.
But he was an entrepreneur, and he took this up, and he worked with researchers and also others. Many others joined and or were also at the source of this. And then within just a few hours of discussion, we said, okay. And I said, for me, what's important is what is holistic. It's not to cut it down to the different skills and qualities. It's how do you experience things? And since then, well, we agreed that we were going to co-organize the Inner Development Goals and the Co-Foundation every year, five days of what we call the Co-Inner Development Goals Forum, which is around experimentation. And we gather between 220 and 250 people for 5 days, where we lead them around experimenting different elements around inner development. And the first year we had, amongst others, one of the SDGs we worked on is one that you mentioned, SDG 2, on ending hunger. How do you bring the inner development in a discussion of the SDG and the hunger? And that's where, with people that had already been working on this, the focus was on conscious food systems. Okay? So this is bringing it back not only on the technical part, but on the inner part. And that's where the outer and the inner meet to become stronger. And I really want to give some kudos to Charlotte and Thomas Legrand and others who have put in place all what's called COFSA, the Conscious Food System Alliance, which is making really big progress. And actually this year, end of August, beginning of September, as part of something broader, there is a key forum or symposium in Bhutan, and Bhutan being an ideal place to bring this type of discussion. I do remember in New York at the review of the SDGs midway, so 2015, on how it is difficult to discuss that notion that if we are backtracking on so many of the indicators, and they're just, if I remember correctly, they're just 20% where we're really making progress. We should question on what have we missed, and I find this movement around the inner development goals quite extraordinary in serving not only as the missing part for the SDGs, but also on how it can integrate and serve for at the level of companies or at the level of municipalities and so on. It's really a very good tool to bring people to enter into a certain awareness that there's more than that technical part.
And maybe kind of putting together, because we have been speaking about a lot of challenges that we are facing in this world, and also in terms of the SDGs are we are behind, the lack of listening maybe to each other, etc. But where do you still see signs that trust and understanding can grow? So where do you still see hope?
Oh, I see it every day. I see it every day. I see it in the nature. We're in spring here, and how nature finds way also to go through the difficulties that it may have. I see it in meeting absolutely incredible people who, despite the odds, are still fighting or still showing the resilience which is needed from the different contexts that they come from, or the different situations, because you don't necessarily have to go to the other side of the world to feel that and to see that. I see it in the smile of people that I would cross in the street, or just an eye contact. Simple things bring me hope. And there's one really important moment that I lived, probably was it 15 years ago? And I was invited to a retreat just outside of Geneva. I can't really recall how come I found myself in this group of people. But there were all, this is 15 years ago, all academics and scientists talking about the climate change. And then you had spiritual people, guardians of the norms of their religions, a nosha, a pastor, an imam, and then a few odd people like me. And I found it difficult at the beginning, because you had these academics and these scientists showing, this is game over. We've made a mess of our planet. So that's 15 years ago. Didn't have to wait for so many more reports to come out. I felt pretty depressed, And then you had these more spiritual people who were living in hope and distilling that hope. So there's the part of where is the action, and the other one is where is the belief that we're going to get out of it, that what's impossible is possible. And I must say, that day I really decided that I wanted to consolidate the fact that I would refuse cynicism and that I would take the direction of hope. If that's the choice, I've chosen hope.
Thanks for that, Ignacio. Um, I forgot to ask you to come up with a question for the next guest.
Yeah. So my question is, in a world that often feels divided, where do you personally find the courage to stay engaged?
Okay. You've said that listening matters as much as speaking. So, what have you learned about truly listening? Especially when, when we talked about this before, when there is disagreement with someone.
Helps me question my certainties
Mhm.
and I think I try for it to stimulate my curiosity. I must say there are some conversations that I find extremely difficult, and I can't say that I have the patience to listen to racist comments or things that are so far from what science is showing us. But I still try and remain connected with whoever is talking about that. But just the other day in the train, I didn't manage, there was a racist remark by someone in the train. So I go up to the person and ask, well, why did you make that remark? And the person, a bit aggressive, I tried to enter into a relationship. I didn't manage. I just said, no, for my own sanity, I'm moving out of here. So it's not to think that I have superpowers and that I manage to do it every day.
Yeah. Maybe further piggybacking on listening. I like listening to music. Music is very important to me. So I always have a question about music for my guests as well. So if I ask you to come up with a piece of music or a song that, for the big part, embodies what you are about, what Ignacio is about, which piece of music or song would that be, and why?
I'm a very bad singer, but imagine all the people sharing all the world. So certainly imagine of John Lennon. It may sound obvious, no? But my choice is not because it's idealistic. Imagine there's no heaven, but because of its invitation to step outside our usual framework. That relates a little bit what I was talking about before, and it's really to imagine a different way of being together, and that's what the world deeply needs at the moment. So for me, this song is less about dreaming and more about creating the conditions where people can begin to see each other differently.
Dave,
And don't
thank
ask
you.
me to continue singing. I'm such a poor singer.
Oh, I think you did great. But maybe you're not aware, but we have made a walk talk listen a playlist, so where you can find all the songs that have been picked by my guests, and so I will add this song as well.
Was
If you
it
go
already there?
if you go to, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
The Beatles and John Lennon are definitely, their songs are definitely picked. But I will add it to the playlist. If you go to Spotify and you search for hashtag Walk Talk Listen, you'll be able to find all the songs from classical to hard rock to jazz to blues, name it. So
Well, I know what I'm doing this evening. Thanks,
you
Maurice.
you need to it's now a couple of hours, I think. So you need to lie down and relax. It gives me a lot of joy, Ignacio. Is is, because when I listen to the songs, I'm reminded again, the
Yeah.
enormous privilege that I have having in talking with these amazing people, and again, you might not always agree with the guests, but I hope that this really contributes to listening, and that you find, hey, actually, there is this part that really resonates with me, and I would like to understand more about this person, and I think that's really necessary nowadays, more than ever. Um, I have a question about the Koch Foundation, and it's not to criticize, so don't take it in that way. It's just a wonderment in terms of how, if you have thought about this, and if this is an issue anyway. Because I think, your palace, the fact that you are able to bring people together to think about, issues of peace and, collaboration and all of that requires that you bring people from all over the world to Switzerland. And, just this week, the past week, in Colombia, there was a huge event where a couple of countries, maybe spearheaded by Colombia, Timor-Leste, and there is a third country that I'm missing now. Anyway, they were talking about, getting fossil fuel out. And so that would mean that, for now at least, until we have other types of ships and planes, and that we should stop traveling by flying, or you go by sailboat, right? So, yeah, is that something that your foundation is thinking about in terms of, one of our strategies is bringing people together in a kind of a sacred space, special place. Yeah, how does this require this change to make our world more just and sustainable? At least, there is a part of us that's saying we need to go into direction, that you start thinking about this differently.
Mm. No, absolutely. And this is one of the elements where it's difficult to be coherent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's balancing what's the cost of not doing and what's the cost of doing. And the carbon footprint, of course, is a major uh, topic that we discuss. It's not the only one. It's also the one on to get people from far away and in their diversity. It's the one also of the visas, of how do you obtain visas. So the question of the freedom of movement, and the third one is the one also of the costs. Switzerland is not one of the cheapest places, right? So for the costs, we are finding ways to subsidize, and we have a program to sponsor people. For the visas, we work closely with the authorities, and we try our best. But the one on the carbon footprint is a complicated one. So a number of our programs are focusing a little bit more on Europe and encouraging people in Europe, especially that Switzerland is in the center of Europe, to come by train. Me myself, I very seldomly. Now I have to say I very seldomly, because I did take the plane the other day, and that was the first time in 6 years for whatever is in Europe. Whether I go to Lisbon or to Stockholm, it is a train, and when there's no train, bus. So we're conscious of it, that we're weighing the cost of not bringing people also. And of course, you can't measure these costs, but we do know we're not fully coherent with also our sustainability efforts, for what we talk about on our respect for Mother Earth and so on. Shall I say that it's at least there's debate, and it's in a conscious manner that we are deciding, okay, let's go for another international forum. Where is this going to lead us? I'm not sure, but the place is so recognized and so powerful for people to meet from all origins and so on. And it also makes this place gives this place the value. Yeah? So I
Uh,
don't have a clear answer. I would say it is something that we debate a lot about. We try and reduce as much as possible the the carbon footprint that we provoke.
mhm.
But we're conscious that we are inviting and organizing meetings where people have no other choice than to take the plane. Yeah.
Mhm. But maybe this is something for your successor to think about, right? Because you talked about jubilation. Is that this year?
Yeah.
Your okay. And why is your jubilation this year? Is it age related, or you're just, you're ready for the next chapter?
Well, it's I'm turning 65, but I'll still be around. And this organization, the Core Foundation, is an absolutely extraordinary organization. And I
Mhm.
wish I didn't meet the values and the approaches before. I think I would have probably done some of my work in a different way.
Mhm.
And in any case, I would stay connected with the organization. There is a notion also in the organization of the giving,
Hmm.
and giving is not only giving money. Giving is giving networks. Giving is giving expertise, and giving is also giving your time. So I would have probably less than the 60 or 70
Mhm.
hours a week that I'm paid
Yeah.
for, and I would have time to give to the organization.
I really like what you said. And within JLI, we talk about the three M's: moment, mastery, and movement, which is related maybe with your three T's as well. But it tells a little bit more, tries to tell a little bit more about the process. My last question to you is about giving. And it is a result of, I think, somebody in the States that searching made videos about um, the one simple act of kindness and its potential to create a ripple effect. And I have two questions around that to you. Um, what do you think about a simple act of kindness and its potential to create a ripple effect? And then if I ask you to do one simple act of kindness today, what would you do?
Mm. I think it's to try and understand. I think it's to reach out to someone perhaps I have been consciously or unconsciously avoiding, um, someone that probably I may disagree with, and simply listen, um, and then engage in a complicated conversation, in putting myself on a learning curve, and um, connecting emotionally with the person. So not to try to convince, but to understand. Um, because I think perhaps from that something new can begin. Yeah.
Okay. No, thank you. So that means I know you have to hurry to catch a train. That if you find if you come across a racist remark today, then you do need to push yourself, right? Because you just promised that to us you would do that. Um, Thank you so much, Ignacio, um, for the conversation today, for what you do, for who you are. Before we close, is there any question that I did not ask you today that I should have asked you?
Oof. I find already you have really many questions, and really interesting ones, and I have enjoyed the conversation. you have stimulated with me the curiosity to go and listen not only to your playlists but also to your previous guests. I like the way you bring in the conversation, Maurice. And if there are other questions, I would like to find a moment with you to see how should we change this damn world at the moment.
I don't have the answer for you on that, but I do think that many of the guests that I've have had the privilege to speak with, they have a lot of wisdom that they shared. So I really would encourage you to
Yes.
listen to some of the other episodes.
Yeah. So that wisdom is with all my predecessors.
Oh yes, and with the
Yes.
future ones.
And then I'm just in the middle.
and you showed us also many wisdoms. So thank you so much, Ignacio, and all the best, and especially good luck with the new the new chapter that's coming up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maurice. All the best. Bye.
Okay, bye bye.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.